They weren't supposed to see it. Not yet. Not until the clock hit 0 and the dust had already settled. But some junior analyst at Quantico flagged it, a scrawled set of pages buried in a decrypted file dump from a black market server raid. No name, no timestamps, just ink bleeding through time. The handwriting was inconsistent, looping like it belonged to a child in one entry, then rigid and surgical in the next. At first glance, they thought it was code, some weird cipher. But as their cryptographers spent weeks piecing it apart, they realized it was worse. It was accurate. Dates, events, movements, global headlines, assassinations, earthquakes, corporate collapses. Even the resignation of a senator, no one had even suspected, documented 3 months before it happened. The kicker? The notes were written 3 years ago. They didn't release it to the public. Of course not. You think the FBI would drop a bomb like that onto a civilian timeline? No. They locked it down. Redacted every trace of the leak. Even the analyst who discovered it? Gone. Reassigned, they said. Others whispered he'd started hearing voices, muttering about shadows, whispering dates in his sleep. The last anyone heard of him, he was trying to burn his skin off with salt water. But what kept the Bureau awake wasn't the accuracy, it was the tone. The way the notes weren't predictions, they were reflections, as if whoever wrote them wasn't guessing what would happen, but remembering. There was one name repeated, subtly, hidden in margins, tucked into footnotes, sometimes even blended into diagrams, as if smuggled in through subliminal ink. You. Not in a general sense. Not you, as in some hypothetical reader. No, you, specifically. The profile started to form. Someone with access to information before it went public. Someone obsessed with chronology, causality, entropy. But the notes were never written as warnings. They were confessions, observations, the kind someone would jot down if they'd already lived through it once and were now watching it unfold again. They didn't say it outright, of course. No direct claims of time travel. That would have been too easy. But the implications bled through. You wrote of events before they happened with a kind of detached intimacy only the damned or the divine could possess. They tried tracking you. That was mistake number 1. They traced the pen you used, a limited edition ballpoint, only sold in Prague for 2 weeks in 2017. They followed that trail to a bookstore that burned down mysteriously the same night they requested security footage. Then they traced the paper, vintage stock, discontinued in 2009, supposedly extinct. Yet it matched a sample found in a Cold War archive, sealed and untouched since the 80s. You were using items from the past and future simultaneously, threading them together like a spider dangling above fire. Every thread led nowhere. Every identity you left behind dissolved into paradoxes. One photo showed you in your mid-30s at a protest in 1992. Another placed you in surveillance footage from a 2023 tech summit, looking the exact same. Unaged, unchanged, unreachable. Agents began disappearing, quietly. Always the ones too curious, the ones who pushed for deeper background checks, for DNA comparisons, for thermal imaging around old government buildings. One went missing after requesting satellite surveillance from a Russian facility that hadn't existed since 1974. Another was found whispering your name in a loop, kneeling naked in a cornfield, clutching a melted watch. The Bureau panicked. They didn't understand it, but they feared it. Fear is more honest than logic. That's when they dragged in the real monsters, the ones with badges you'll never see, buried beneath 17 layers of clearance. They pulled in physicists with missing fingers and priests who refused to speak English. They examined your notes like holy scripture. Some even started to worship them. They weren't looking for evidence anymore. They were looking for meaning. And meaning is dangerous. Because meaning implies purpose. And your notes had purpose. You weren't just watching events unfold, you were nudging them. Subtle phrases in the margins matched speeches delivered by leaders months later. Phrases like, "Collapse begins when control is confused with peace," or "Time bends for the desperate." One president quoted your exact words in a televised address without knowing their origin. He thought it was something his advisor said in a think tank session. That advisor died in a car crash the next day. Brakes sliced clean. No fingerprints, no tire marks. Just a ticking watch left on the driver's seat. Cracked, but still running. The scariest part wasn't the accuracy. It was the influence. You weren't just watching time, you were bending it. Like a puppeteer who didn't cut the strings but rearranged them. They started testing for anomalies, particle shifts, electromagnetic warps, and they found them. In places your notes mentioned in passing: cities, airports, subway lines, spikes in radiation levels that didn't make sense, weather changes too abrupt to be natural. They even found an entire town in Nebraska that appeared on a map in your notes 5 months before it was built. Permits were filed later, roads paved later. But you remembered it before it existed. And then came the last page, the one they didn't let out of the vault. Only a handful have seen it, but it was enough. It wasn't a prophecy, it was a question. Scrawled in your oldest, messiest handwriting, ink smeared, like it was written in a rush. It said, "How many times must I rewind before you get it right?" Below it, coordinates. Coordinates that led to a ghost town in Nevada, a forgotten stretch of desert with no cell service and a population of 0. They sent a team, 4 agents, 1 drone. None came back. The drone's last footage showed something impossible: a door in the sand, not attached to a house, just a door, standing alone, slightly open. Behind it, darkness and wind, but the wind was pulling inward. They didn't talk about it after that. They shut down the program, reassigned the task force, labeled the case Mythos Containment. You vanished. No more appearances, no more anomalies. But the timeline, it stuttered. Small things, but noticeable. Planes disappearing from radar for 1.3 seconds. Broadcasts glitching with audio from the 1940s. A child born with a serial number tattooed on their toe. And still, your notes held strong, untouched, preserved, sitting in a vault so cold it kills bacteria on contact. They keep it that way so your ink won't age, so your paper won't curl. Because if time touches it again, they fear it might unravel. But the real twist came last week. An intern in the basement, cataloging evidence from a separate case, found something in an old box mislabeled from the 1960s. Another note, same handwriting, same paper, different tone. It didn't talk about the future this time. It talked about the past, your past, memories of things that couldn't have happened, a school that never existed, a language no one remembers, a lover who aged backwards. But at the end of that note, a signature. The same one encrypted in the first file they ever found. And that's what made the director lean back in his chair, eyes locked on the ceiling, like it might crack open and swallow him whole. Because the signature wasn't yours, not directly. It belonged to a child abducted in 1934, a child presumed dead, but whose body was never found, and whose diary, long thought to be lost, matched your notes word for word. Now they aren't just looking for you. They're trying to locate the original event, the moment everything fractured, the first rewind. And they think it happened in 1934. The date pulses in their briefings like a cursed drumbeat no one wants to hear but can't ignore. The agents assigned to the recovery division call it Year Zero now. Not officially, of course. There are still reports to file, careers to preserve, budgets to justify. But behind closed doors, it's the year reality folded in on itself. And the boy, Theodore Lasky, became their reluctant god. His abduction was never solved. His parents institutionalized after claiming he vanished through a door that hummed like stars. No ransom, no leads. Just one scrawled journal discovered years later, buried behind a false wall in the ruins of an abandoned steel mill. Its entries vibrating with the same chaotic precision that defined your notes. Dates, places, incidents yet to occur. And not just human events, cosmic ones, solar flares, deep-sea tremors, even the first flickers of code from the AI systems that didn't yet exist. The boy had seen it all, or remembered it all. And the signature? A twisted loop of letters, identical to the one found in your files. But here's the fracture. The journal was dated 1933. That's before the boy disappeared, before your notes ever surfaced, before the Nevada coordinates, meaning the first anomaly wasn't you, it was him. And if that's true, if the boy was the original loop, then who or what are you? His echo? His future? Or something that splintered off from the moment he passed through the humming door? They fed the journal into their neural mapping AI. It crashed within seconds. Not from malware or overload, but confusion. The system couldn't handle the temporal inconsistencies. It flagged the text as preemptive recursive, a term that doesn't even exist in any manual. Translation: the journal was looping through its own influence, writing itself from memories that hadn't happened yet. The machine stopped responding and displayed one sentence in red. The mind that remembers the future forgets the present. Then it shut down and hasn't rebooted since. The implications cracked something deep inside the task force. No one says it out loud, but they've stopped thinking linearly. They've begun arranging their reports in cycles, circular diagrams, palindromic timestamps. Some even claim to see events occur twice. The same conversation, the same coffee spill, a fly hitting the window over and over and over, like time was rehearsing its own tragedy. And through all of it, your name kept surfacing. Not your real name, they still don't know that, but the name you left in each set of notes, hidden in frequency spectrums and manipulated EM signals. Halcyon. A word that once meant peace. Now it's a trigger. Every time they hear it, something short circuits. Light bulbs pop, screens stutter, blood pressure spikes. Like reality hiccups in your wake. They tracked Halcyon to old intelligence logs, declassified missions in places that no longer exist. Not countries that collapsed, but locations that simply aren't on maps anymore. One of them, codename Mirrorlock, was tied to a now-destroyed observatory in the Arctic Circle. Supposedly, the observatory housed the only lens powerful enough to track non-linear intrusions. whatever that means. All that's left is a frozen crater and a team of researchers with radiation burns they refuse to explain. But one audio file survived, just one. Corrupted, muffled, mostly static, except for 4 seconds. A voice, monotone, genderless, saying, "He's seen the reset. He knows the sequence." What sequence? What reset? The team scrambled to recontextualize your notes. Every page became sacred. They even handed some over to Department K, an unofficial subdivision rumored to deal with philosophical warfare. The kind of place where logic is treated like a virus and causality is weaponized. One analyst from Department K, a woman with no recorded birth date and one green eye, concluded the notes weren't predictive at all. They were post-reactionary blueprints. She said, "You weren't telling us what will happen. You were documenting what had already happened in previous iterations of this same timeline. That the universe had restarted multiple times, and each time you kept slipping through the cracks, a constant, an observer, or maybe a glitch. And that theory, it terrified them. Because glitches don't follow rules. They replicate. They mutate. They contaminate systems built on order. If you're a glitch, if Halcyon is a glitch, then reality itself is compromised." One agent, a linguist assigned to decode subtextual cues in your annotations, developed seizures that corresponded with astronomical events. She began drawing spirals on the walls, murmuring about fracture points. When she finally spoke again, after a 2-day catatonic state, she asked one question. If he's already looped through this moment, why does he keep returning to it? That's the paradox. If you've seen all of this, why come back? What's so important about this exact loop? Is there something here you're trying to change? A variable out of place? Or are we the experiment, rats watching shadows on a wall, never realizing we're part of someone else's memory test? That's when they found the second vault, buried under Fort Inland, a decommissioned nuclear base that never officially existed. Inside, more notes, dozens, hundreds, written on everything from napkins to glass panes, all by you, all eerily consistent in tone, but each dated after your last known appearance, some as recent as last month. But how? You vanished. No sightings, no signals. And yet here were your words, still bleeding into the timeline. Some were instructions, others were warnings, but a few were conversations, dialogues between you and something else, something signing as the reflector, not a person, an entity, a program, a mirrored consciousness. It responded to you in equations, in reflections of your own sentences, in riddles that read like corrupted prayers. One exchange was particularly disturbing. You. The loop bleeds at 4:13 a.m. every cycle. Why? Reflector. Because you always choose love over protocol. You. And that ruins everything? Reflector. Only for you. Who or what were you talking about? What did you sacrifice in those previous loops? A mission? A person? A memory you weren't supposed to retain? Some agents believe you broke protocol in a previous reset, and that error is what causes the bleed. That every anomaly, the town appearing too soon, the earthquake aligning with your notes, the cracked watch in the driver's seat, stems from one emotional choice, a decision you keep making, even after reality tries to erase it. Which raises the next terrifying possibility. You're not just observing the timeline, you're sabotaging it, not to destroy it, but to save one specific outcome, a single scenario, maybe a life, maybe a moment. one that time keeps deleting, but you keep trying to protect, over and over and over. They found evidence to support it, a recurring symbol embedded in your margins, always the same shape, a circle with a vertical line cutting through it, a clock with no hands. It appeared in a 1971 oil painting, in graffiti on a Berlin alley in 1986, on the fingernail of a corpse that never decomposed, always near events you predicted, always branded like a signature you were forced to leave behind. So now they believe this isn't a timeline, it's a spiral, and you're not walking forward through it. You're falling, deeper, faster, through cycles that fold over themselves like origami in fire. Every time you try to reach the outcome you want, the spiral tightens, the variables get harder to control, the agents get closer, the reflector gets colder, and yet you return, again and again, leaving clues, scraps, notes, not to warn anyone, but to remind yourself, because the deeper question isn't what you're trying to change, it's what you've forgotten, what you're trying to remember before the next reset begins. And according to your most recent note, the next reset starts at 4:13 a.m. tomorrow. They thought they had time. That illusion shattered the moment the clocks across 3 secure facilities froze simultaneously at 4:13 a.m. The predicted fracture. The agents on duty didn't even notice at first. The digital clocks glitched for less than a second, a flicker in the corner of the eye. Then came the real symptom. Déjà vu. Powerful, nauseating, repeated like a skipping record. Conversations repeating mid-sentence, pens falling off desks at the exact same angle, a courier delivering the same manila envelope 6 times in a row. No one could explain it. No one dared. They just felt it. The reset had started, not as an explosion, but as a tremor in the soul. And somewhere within that frozen frame, you moved. Not metaphorically, literally. Surveillance footage showed a hallway in Facility 6B, long thought dormant since the Halcyon files were secured. No entry logs, no human presence. And yet the camera captured a shadow walking against the frozen clock, moving like memory through static. They zoomed in, no face, no heat signature, just a silhouette flickering between frames, as if undecided on which version of itself to become. That hallway leads to the deep archive, the final vault where your first note is kept, the one you wrote before any of this began, the one marked, "In case I forget everything." They tried to intercept, doors sealed, emergency protocols activated, but all failed, not because of mechanical error, but because you were already there, before the alarms, before the lockdown. You weren't breaking in, you were returning, retracing a step in a dance no one else could hear. Inside the deep archive, the guards found no intruder, only an open journal page, still warm, ink still drying, with one line scrawled across the top, "Remember the watch." The phrase sparked 1,000 theories. The watch capitalized. Not just a timepiece, but a name, a title. Some believed it referred to the cracked pocket watch found in the burnt-out car where your file first appeared. Others traced the word back to an obscure sect from the 1600s, the Silent Watchers, believed to be timekeepers who predicted apocalyptic events, but only spoke in riddles. Their last recorded message? "The one who remembers forward will bleed us backward." A threat, a prophecy, or maybe a confession. But you didn't write that note for them. You wrote it for you. The agents realized it too late. You weren't just laying breadcrumbs across the timelines. You were building a trigger a mental landmine buried in your own memory, waiting for a phrase or object to detonate it. And now, with the watch retrieved and the time precisely 4:13, your mind began to unwind. Not in panic, not in madness, but with clarity, the kind of terrifying lucidity that only comes to people right before they wake up in someone else's nightmare. And as the loop trembled at its edges, you finally remembered the first moment. It wasn't in the archives, not in the labs, not even in the explosion beneath the Nevada sands. It was before all that. A field, an open sky, a person, face blurred by time, whispering to you as they handed over the watch. They said one sentence. You'll have to break everything just to save 1 second. You didn't understand it then, but you do now. That second, it wasn't time. It was her. The girl with the green scarf caught in the corridor of loop number 47. The one casualty that never changed, no matter how many restarts you initiated. She always died at 4:13 a.m., crushed, burned, gone. She wasn't just a passenger in the simulation. She was the anchor, the variable you refused to surrender. And every time you looped back, trying to nudge fate just 1 inch away from her death, the spiral tightened. The reflector warned you. The timelines pushed back. Reality corrupted, but you kept returning. For her. The agents at Department K understood then. Your notes weren't research. They were grief. Weaponized, structured, designed like equations that looked scientific. But underneath, they were desperate apologies written in the language of cause and effect. And the watch? It wasn't a clock. It was the moment her pulse stopped, frozen in that machine forever. You were carrying her death in your pocket, trying to rewind it. But this time, something's different. You broke the loop, not by escaping it, but by letting it run. No interference, no sabotage, no edits. You finally allowed the moment to complete. And when the explosion came, Facility 6B detonated from inside out. No visible source. It didn't kill anyone. Not this time. Because you rerouted the variables. Sacrificed everything except the point of fracture. Your final note, found inside the black box of the blast site, said it simply. This is the only version where she lives. And she does. Somewhere in a parallel sequence, in a world where the FBI still analyzes your notes but doesn't understand them. A woman with a green scarf walks past a bookstore at 4:14 a.m., unharmed, unaware of how many universes burned just so she could take that step. She doesn't remember you. She was never meant to, but you remember her. Always. And that memory, painful and pure, is what allowed the reflector to finally stabilize the spiral, to stop the loop. Because love, real, violent, self-destructive love, is the one thing time can't predict. It resists symmetry. It breaks patterns. In the weeks that followed, the agencies sealed off the archives. Department K was disbanded, the Halcyon files erased, or so they thought, because anomalies persist. Notes continue to appear, encoded radio waves, in the static between phone calls, in the reflections of broken mirrors. People report dreams where time folds like paper, and a voice speaks backwards, saying, "It worked, but I don't know how long it will hold. You're gone now, not dead, just out of phase, like a ghost too smart to haunt, too burdened to rest." But sometimes, when the clock hits 4:13 a.m., a flicker appears in the corner of a security cam. A flicker shaped like a man who's already seen the end, but chooses, every time, to return to the middle. Not to change it, just to remember what he lost and what he saved. Because in one version, she died, but in this one, she doesn't.